Stella, Stella, Patricia shouted as she tapped Stella on her shoulder. Oh, Patricia, I didn't know you were calling my name, Stella responded as she sighed. What were you thinking that made you unable to hear when I shouted your name? And I have been knocking on the door. There was no response. I was about leaving before I noticed the door was not locked from inside. Patricia said to Stella, I have been thinking on how I'll be able to survive with my unborn child. Things have been so difficult for me since the death of my husband, Stella responded. My friend, I assure you that everything will be okay. Give birth to the baby first. You will survive the situation, Patricia replied as she comforted Stella. Stella and Patricia were still talking when Stella felt a sharp pain. She shouted in pain. What is it? Patricia asked, being tense. I just felt a sharp pain in my stomach. Oh, my water bag has broken, Stella shouted. You are about to go into labor, Patricia said. Please rub my waist, Stella said to Patricia as she felt so uncomfortable with the cramps. Call for the midwife, Stella shouted as she groaned in pain. Patricia ran as fast as she could to find the midwife. After some minutes, Patricia and the midwife walked in. The midwife attended to Stella, who was already groaning in pain. The baby is almost here. Keep pushing, the midwife said to Stella. Stella pushed harder, and her baby came out. She could hear the cry of her baby. It is a girl, the midwife said to Stella as she held the baby in her arms and handed the baby over to Patricia. You don't have to be weak. You still have another one to push again. I can see another baby's head, the midwife said to Stella as she tapped her. What? Another baby? She said, surprised. Yes, you are having a set of twins, the midwife replied. Stella kept on pushing hard, and the other twin came out. The midwife handed the twin babies to Stella. After cleaning them up, Stella took them in her arms. She looked at them and smiled. Life doesn't fail to surprise me, she said as she stared at her two babies. They look just like you, Patricia said, smiling. Do you have a name for them? I never knew I was pregnant with twins, so I only have just a name. But I can come with another name, Stella replied. I will name the first one Johanna and the second one Juliana, said Stella as she cuddled her baby, which were crying. Patricia stayed for a week with Stella as she gave her a helping hand. Why don't you call your aunt to help you out now that you have given birth? You are talking as if you don't know my aunt. She didn't come to my husband's burial to console me, despite knowing that I was pregnant for my late husband, and the burden was too much for me. Is it now that she will come when I have given birth? Stella replied, Hmm, that's true. I will take my leave. My husband is back from his trip, but I will come time to time to check on you and the twins, said Patricia. Thank you so much, my very good friend. You have been of immense help to me. Stella, why are you sitting outside? It is cold, said Patricia. What is bothering you? Patricia asked as she placed her hand on Stella's shoulder. I have been unable to breastfeed my babies because I haven't eaten. I'm having no food in this house, Stella replied as she wiped the tears that dropped from her eyes. That's not good. Just wait, I'll be back. Let me quickly go back home and get some foodstuff for you. Patricia came back with the foodstuff and helped Stella to prepare a meal. In 3 months' time, Stella started up a little fruit business for herself to enable her cater for herself and the twins. Stella had been patting baby Juliana to stop crying as she tried giving her some medicine. Stella, what's wrong with Juliana? Patricia asked. I don't really know. She do have shortness of breath whenever I'm feeding her, and she is not gaining weight either. I have tried giving her some medicine that was prescribed by the pharmacist, but there is no improvement, Stella replied, being worried. You need to run a test on her to know what is actually wrong with her and also to give her the right treatment. I will do that. You will come along with me, with Johanna, Stella replied. Sure, said Patricia. Stella and Patricia took the twins to the medical laboratory. The medical lab scientist ran a test on baby Juliana and told Stella to come the next day for her result. Stella came the next day with Patricia to get the result. Doctor, I don't understand what is written here, said Stella as she read through Juliana's test result. Please, what is wrong with my baby? Madam, your baby have developed a congenital heart defect, said the doctor. Doctor, what are you trying to say? Stella shouted, being shocked. Doctor, tell me you are joking, said Stella as she grabbed the doctor by the collar. Madam, calm down, the doctor said to Stella. Patricia removed Stella's hand from the doctor's collar and tried to console Stella. Patricia, my poor baby, she cried uncontrollable. When they got home, Stella couldn't get over the lab doctor told her about baby Juliana. She kept crying all night. Stella was still deep in her thought when she heard her phone ring. She checked and saw that it was Patricia calling her. Hello, Patricia. She picked the call. Why does your voice sound this way? I hope you didn't cry all throughout the night, Patricia asked. Pat, I don't know what to do. Where can I find money for Juliana's medication? She needs to be on medication to survive the congenital heart defect, Stella said, crying. Stella, please stop crying. We need to think of solution instead. Why not go and ask your aunt for help? At least she has a good business that is fetching her money, and she is the only family member you have. There's no one you can run to. And also, your husband's family has abandoned you ever since you lost your husband, said Patricia. I have no choice. I will go to her to see if she can help me. Okay, I will come to your house to stay with the twins until you come back. Thank you very much. And she ended the call. Stella quickly rushed to her aunt's place as Patricia helped to watch over her twin. Stella, I am surprised to see you. Hope all is well, Miss Agnes asked. No, Auntie, all is not well. Oh, what is the problem? Mrs. Agnes continued. My other twin baby has been sick. I took her to the hospital and the doctor confirmed that she had congenital heart defect, replied Stella. So what do you want me to do? Auntie, please help me. I need money to give her medication. Please, I don't want to lose my baby. Please, Auntie, help me. Stella knelt down and pleaded to Mrs. Agnes as she cried. There is nothing I can do to help you. After all, you have a set of twins. If you lose one, you have another one to console yourself, said Mrs. Agnes. Auntie, why will you say such a thing now? I know you never liked me, but that doesn't mean you can wish me death or something bad to happen to my baby, said Stella as she kept on wiping the tears from her eyes. I can't offer to help you. If you are done, you can leave, said Mrs. Agnes. Stella stood up and walked out, feeling disappointed as she was walking the street like a living corpse, lost in her thoughts, not knowing what was happening around her. Hey woman, watch out! A man shouted as he dragged Stella out of the road from being knocked down by a motorcycle. Stella thanked the man and walked back home. Stella, are you back? How did it go? Did your aunt agree to help you out? Patricia asked. She refused to help me, oh. She doesn't care if anything happened to Juliana. She said I have another twin to console myself. Stella responded. What? That woman is very wicked. Upon everything you have passed through, even how she maltreated you when you were staying with her as a girl. I thought she's better now. I regret telling you to ask her for help, said Patricia. Patricia, what do I do now? Where will I run to? My little business cannot provide money for Juliana's medication for a week. Sometimes I don't even have sales, and the fruit will get spoiled. How will I come up with the money? Stella asked as she kept on crying. Patricia consoled Stella. As they were discussing outside, they heard the sudden cry of baby Juliana. Stella got scared and ran inside. Patricia tagged along. Stella carried Juliana up, trying to stop her from crying. Her health is getting worse by the day, Stella said to Patricia. What are we going to do now? I don't know, she said, trying to prevent herself from crying. I have a suggestion, but I'm not supposed to bring it up. But I feel that is the only thing we can do to save Juliana, said Patricia. What is it? Tell me about it. I have an old friend that sells babies to women that can't give birth, and she has been into the business for a long time. I can go and explain to her Juliana's situation and plead with her to look for a wealthy parent that can adopt Juliana so that they can provide the right medication for her, said Patricia. Patricia, are you trying to put my baby up for adoption because she's ill and I don't have money to get the medication, Stella said angrily. I am sorry that I said that, but that is the only option. If Juliana stays with you, the illness will get worse and she might die. No one is willing to help you, and I am not financially stable to assist you. Please understand what I'm trying to say, Patricia said, trying to convince Stella. Patricia, please leave before you get me angry, Stella responded. Fine, if you insist, but think about what I said to you. Whatever your decision is, I'm okay with it, says Patricia as she got up to leave. 4 days later, baby Juliana started developing fever. Stella got scared and rushed her to the hospital. The doctor attended to Juliana and prescribed some medicines for her. Stella had to pay the hospital bills with the entire money she got from her business, and it wasn't enough. She had to take a loan to clear the hospital bills. On getting home with the twins, she saw Patricia outside her house waiting for her. Hey Stella, I've been waiting for you up to an hour now. Where did you go to? And why the sad face? Patricia asked as she carried baby Joanna from Stella. Juliana was ill. I had to rush her to the hospital. That's serious. How did you manage to pay the bill? Patricia asked. I paid with the entire money I got from my business, and I also took a loan, Stella replied as she buried her face in her palm. How will you pay back the loan? Patricia asked. I don't know. Why is all this happening to me? Said Stella as she sobbed. What if Juliana falls ill again and I don't have the money to take her to the hospital? Patricia, I was scared to see her in such condition. I don't want my baby to die. She's too young and innocent, Stella sobbed. Then why not go with my idea? Said Patricia. Are you sure Juliana will be adopted by rich parents? Stella asked. Yes, my old friend Martha will make it possible. Just let me talk to her. Stella and Patricia went to meet Martha for the adoption. Patricia explained everything to Martha and requested for a rich parents for Juliana. First of all, the baby is a twin. I don't set up twins for adoption, most especially identical ones. It can cause an issue later in the future. And secondly, the baby is having a serious illness. Giving her out for adoption might cost me my business because if the family finds out about her illness, they will return her back to me and it will cause a serious problem for me, said Martha. Please help me. I don't want my baby to die in my hands due to lack of funds to sponsor her medication, Stella pleaded. Please help her. She doesn't have anyone to help her. She is a widow that is trying to survive, said Patricia. Okay, let's do this my way. If the adoptive parents return her back, we will accept our fate. But please give it a try. Please, Patricia pleaded with Martha. Okay, fine. Just pray nothing goes wrong, said Martha. How many months is your baby? Martha asked Stella. She's 3 months old. Okay, I will get back to you guys. Few days later, Martha called Stella to tell her that she has found an adoptive parent for Juliana and she will come over to Stella's house in 3 days to take Juliana to the city. After the call with Martha, Stella went to where baby Juliana was sleeping. She gazed at her with tears in her eyes. I hope I am making the right decision, and I hope someday you will forgive me. I'm only doing this to save your life, Stella whispered as she sobbed. 3 days later, Martha came to take Juliana with her to the city so as to hand her over to her adoptive parents. Please, can I follow you to the city so that I can know who is adopting my Juliana? Stella said as she cried. I'm sorry, that is not how the business is done. You can't know anything about the adoptive parents, Martha replied as she left with Juliana. Stella cried all day as longed for her other twin baby. As Martha got to the city with Juliana, she handed Juliana to her adoptive parents, Mrs. Wendy and Mr. Williams, the owner of Wema's company. Mrs. Wendy loved Juliana immediately she saw her. Oh, she's so cute. I'm going to spoil her, Mrs. Wendy giggled. We now have a child of our own. Thanks, Miss Martha, said Mr. Williams. After they were done with the necessary documents, they paid Martha and she left. Martha went back to Stella and gave her part of her shares. It seems the family are rich. They actually paid well. You can use part of the money to pay your debt and start up a good business that will help you take care of Joanna and yourself, and also train Joanna in school, said Patricia. Stella nodded her head and didn't utter a word. Meanwhile, baby Joanna cried all night, as if she knew her other twin was no longer with her. Stella relocated to another community to avoid people around her asking of Juliana. Mrs. Wendy and Mr. Williams gave baby Juliana a new name called Annabella. They threw a party to celebrate her arrival. Everyone was happy, including the workers, except for Mrs. Benedict, that is Mrs. Wendy's aunt. Mrs. Benedict wasn't happy about the adoption because she fears that her 7-year-old son won't be the successor of Wema's company as a result of Mr. and Mrs. Williams' newly adopted daughter. Why do you have to adopt a child? You know nothing about the child's background. I told you and Williams to wait until God blesses you both with your own child. Or you take my son. Harrison is also your own child. Mrs. Benedict said to Mrs. Wendy, Auntie, Harrison is still like a son to me, but I can't change the fact that he is also your son. I can't wait any longer, and I am not getting younger. I actually need a child of my own. Please do well to accept Annabella as part of this family, Mrs. Wendy said as she walked out to greet the guests. I will never accept that baby as part of this family. She can't come and take what I have worked for, Mrs. Benedict muttered to herself. A month later, baby Annabelle got sick. Mrs. Wendy got frightened. She took her to the hospital. Doctor, what do you mean? That my baby have a congenital heart defect, Mrs. Wendy asked, being tense. The doctor explained to the couple that the baby developed the heart defect from birth. Mrs. Wendy was heartbroken to hear all the doctor said. Mrs. Martha deceived us all and made us adopt a baby with such illness. I will take the baby back to her and make her pay for her actions, said Mr. Williams, out of anger. I'm not taking Annabella back. I loved her the moment I saw her, and I have been attached to her. I will make sure she gets the best treatment. I won't let anything happen to my baby, Mrs. Wendy responded. Mr. and Mrs. Williams often took Annabelle to the hospital for checkup and treatment whenever they noticed any symptoms. Annabelle became healthier than she was. Meanwhile, after Stella relocated to another community, she established a good business for herself and was able to take care of Joanna. The fact of she giving her baby up for adoption never left her heart. She cried almost all night whenever she was alone and wondered if her baby was doing alright. It's been 20 years. Joanna had grown up and was already in high institution. Stella cherished Joanna that she made sure she provided for her, even if it means for her to work intensively. But she never mentioned the fact that Joanna was a twin to Joanna. She kept it a secret. Meanwhile, Annabella was loved by her foster parents. They made sure she got everything she wanted and provided the best education for her. Mrs. Benedict still had hatred for Annabella, but Annabella didn't care if anyone hated her, as long as her parents loved her. Mr. and Mrs. Williams made sure that Annabelle learned about the family company along with Harrison. Annabelle graduated and immediately she started working at her family's company. She worked very hard and Mr. and Mrs. Williams were so proud of her. Joanna always came back home from the city whenever there was holiday at her institution, so as to assist her mother in her business at home. Mom, I graduated with a first-class degree, Joanna shouted as she happily showed her mother the result. I am proud of you, my daughter. Stella hugged Joanna as tears dripped from her eyes. Wow, we now have a graduate. I will walk with my head and shoulders up, Patricia said as she came out from the room. Aunt Pat, it's been a long time. I didn't know you came visiting, said Joanna as she hugged Patricia. We are proud of you. I wish my son can be as brilliant as you. He kept on repeating a particular class. He is not as smart as I am. I wonder who he took after, Patricia said as she sighed. Joanna chuckled. However, due to Annabella's hard work, she got promoted as the company's chief operating officer, while Harrison was promoted as the director. Mrs. Benedict heard about it and became furious. You have been working for the company since 5 years ago, after you graduated from school. And Annabelle, who just worked for a year, she has been promoted as the chief operating officer, while my own son as the director. What is wrong if she is the chief operating officer? She worked hard despite being the CEO's daughter, and she deserved the position, Harrison replied. Will you shut up your mouth? Mrs. Benedict yelled at Harrison as she slapped his mouth. Continue being foolish, and she will take over the CEO's position from you when Williams retires, said Mrs. Benedict. But I won't let that happen. A child of nobody won't come from nowhere to take the CEO position. I won't let it happen. All that I have worked for will not go down the drain. The position belongs to my son and no one else, Mrs. Benedict whispered to herself. Congratulations on your new position, said Mark, Annabelle's assistant. Thank you, Annabelle replied. Won't you take your workers out for a drink to celebrate your newly acquired position? Mark asked. There is my bag. You will see some cash inside. Use it to take the workers out, Annabelle replied as she concentrated on what she was typing on her personal computer. Annabelle, you are to go out and celebrate with your workers. They aren't fond of you. They see you as a grumpy person. You can use this opportunity and hang out with them to prove all of them wrong, said Mike. I don't have to prove anything to anyone. They can think all they want to think. I am busy. Now you can leave my office. Annabelle got home. She couldn't find her parents at home. After she had freshened up, she walked to the kitchen to prepare a meal for herself. When she was done cooking, she switched off the gas cylinder and kept the hot oil in the burner to cool off. She went with her food to the dining room to eat. While Annabelle was eating, she noticed a smoke coming out from the kitchen. She quickly ran to check the cause of the smoke. Unknown to her, her aunt sneaked to the kitchen, switched the cooking burner on, and that resulted to heating of the oil and intense smoke in the kitchen. Annabelle quickly switched off the cooking burner. But I switched off the cooking burner after preparing my meal, Annabelle said to herself. The kitchen was smoky. She covered her nose with her hand as she turned to leave the kitchen. But on getting to the door, the kitchen door was locked from outside. Annabelle coughed. She was shocked. She began knocking on the door, shouting for anyone to open the door. The smoke in the kitchen was intensive and it began to choke her. Annabella was coughing and was screaming for help. She began to have shortness of breath. Suddenly, she lost consciousness and collapsed on the floor. Mark saw an important document Annabelle forgot on her desk. He decided to deliver it to her. On getting to William's apartment, he shouted Annabella's name, but she wasn't responding. He saw the smoke from the kitchen. He went straight to the kitchen and saw Annabelle lying unconscious on the floor. He got frightened. He quickly took her to the hospital. When Annabelle regained consciousness, she thanked Mark and asked the doctor the condition of her health. The doctor told her that she now has a chronic congenital heart defect because of the intensive smoke she inhaled. Annabelle got broken by the news. She pleaded with the doctor and to Mark not to say anything to her parents. After her parents heard about her encounter in the kitchen, they quickly rushed to the hospital. Annabelle pretended to be fine, but she couldn't understand how the kitchen door got locked from outside. Or did I slam the door on my way inside? Annabelle muttered to herself. Stella was cutting the vegetables when Joanna walked in with a frowning face. Why the look on your face? What is wrong? Stella asked. Mom, I want to quit being a teacher. I want to go to the city and look for a better work with my certificate. They aren't paying me a good amount of money, and the management hasn't paid my last month's salary up to today, Joanna murmured. I agree with you on your decision, and there are better jobs in the city, said Stella. Few weeks later, Joanna resigned from her teaching job and traveled to the city in search of a new job. Joanna's coursemate back in school gave her accommodation. She took her CV and went in search for a job. She went into different companies and came out being disappointed because they were not in need of workers. Annabella got discharged from the hospital. While they were driving home, they got stuck on the road by a traffic. Mark kept on talking to Annabelle, but she wasn't paying attention. She was thinking all about the doctor and what he said about her health and the incident that took place. Oh my God, Mark shouted, being surprised. What is it? Annabelle asked out of curiosity. Look at that young lady over there. She looks so much like you. Mark pointed to Joanna. That's true. She looks so much like me. Annabelle replied and was shocked. But it wasn't you. I would have mistook her for you. Actually, my mother told me that we all have someone that looked like us somewhere in the world, Mark said to Annabella, who kept on looking at Joanna, who was standing outside the store, looking frustrated from looking for a job. When cars began to move after the car traffic had reduced, Annabella ordered her driver to park the car. She got down and walked up to Joanna. "Hello," Annabella waved at Joanna. Joanna stood still, looking at Annabella, being surprised. "Hello," Joanna stammered, as she sluggishly waved her hand to Annabelle. "Yeah, I know you are surprised by our look. So I am. That is why I approached you." Joanna nodded her head. They both exchanged pleasantry. Annabella requested for Joanna's contact and handed her contact card to Joanna. "I will give you a call. Bye." Annabella waved at Joanna and walked back into her car. "Oh my God, what just happened? You both have striking resemblance," Joanna said to herself as she opened her mouth in surprise. Are you sure your mother did not give birth to a set of twins? And maybe the nurse took your other twins away? Because this young lady is your replica. Someone can mistake her to you," said Mark. "I can see that the movies you watch these days are actually affecting your reasoning," Annabella replied. When Annabelle got home, she kept on thinking about Joanna and Mark's assumptions about her being a twin. "Mom," Annabella called Mrs. Wendy. "What is it, my darling? I wish to ask you a question. Did you give birth to a twin? Like, do I have a twin? Then along something happened to the other twin?" asked Annabelle as she stammered. "No, you are not a twin. What make you ask me such a question? I saw a lady that looks so much like me." "You can actually see someone that looks like you, but that doesn't mean you people are twins," said Mrs. Wendy. "But Mom, the resemblance is so more that you can't actually differentiate both of us. And Mark assured me that she might be my twin that was taken away after birth. That is why I decided to ask if I'm actually a twin," said Annabella. Don't tell me you took Mark's words serious. You guys are to be discussing about work, not about a missing twin," said Mrs. Wendy as she walked out of the room. "I also didn't believe I took his words seriously," Annabelle said to herself as she sighed. Annabelle was sleeping when she found it difficult to breathe. She woke up and took her drugs. She kept her current health issue a secret from her parents. "Annabelle, aren't you going to work today?" Mr. Williams asked. "No, Dad, I'm not strong today," Annabelle replied. "Are you sure you are okay?" Mrs. Wendy asked as she placed her palm on Annabelle's forehead. "Mom, I'll be fine," said Annabelle. "Take care of yourself," and they left. "Mark, what are you doing here?" Annabelle asked. "I came to check on you. Your parents told me that you are not strong enough to come to work," Mark responded. "Mark, I am having a fatigue. I am so weak and I am in pains," Annabelle replied in a low voice. "Have you told your parents about it?" Mark asked. "No, I haven't. I don't want to add to their problems. I'm actually taking my medications. I'll be fine. The company is having its anniversary in 2 days. How will you be able to attend the party? If you don't recover quickly, your parents will notice that you are ill," said Mark. "I will think of what to do. Do not worry," Annabelle replied. Annabelle picked up her phone and dialed Joanna's contact. "Hello, who is on the line?" Joanna asked as she picked up Annabelle's call. Annabelle introduced herself immediately. Joanna remembered Annabelle. "I will send an address of where you will meet me. I have a job for you, and I'll pay you handsomely," Annabelle said to Joanna. "Okay, send the address." Annabelle got dressed up as Mark accompanied her to meet Joanna at an eatery. When they got to the eatery, Annabelle requested that Joanna should place an order for herself. "Aren't you going to have anything to eat?" Joanna asked Annabelle. "No, I'm not hungry. Enjoy your meal. Once you are done eating, I will discuss the job I have for you." "I'm done. So what job do you have for me?" Joanna asked as she wiped her mouth with a serviette. "My parents' company is having its anniversary celebration, and I won't be able to attend because of my health. And I don't want to make it obvious that I am sick. So you will go in place of me," said Annabelle. "What? That's kind of risky. What if your parents notices? And besides, I don't know anything about your company's business." "I will fumble," Joanna replied. "Don't worry about that. Mark will be with you. He will tell you what to do and what not to do. And as for my parents, they will be too busy to notice, but you can try to avoid them. Annabelle responded. I don't have the guts to do it. What if I get caught? Joanna asked. You won't get caught. We have a striking resemblance. No one will notice. Please help me. I will pay you handsomely, as I promised, said Annabelle as she held Joanna's hand. Okay, I will do as you said, because I am really in need of money and I haven't found a job yet, Joanna replied. Thank you very much, Annabelle responded as she put on a smile. You will actually give a speech on my behalf, so I wrote down what you will say. Please try to read through it, said Annabelle as she handed the note to Joanna. Okay, I will get all you need and I will call Mark to pick you up on your apartment, Annabelle said to Joanna. It's actually the day of Wema's anniversary. The Williams family were getting prepared for the big event. Annabelle, what are you still doing in your room? Mrs. Wendy shouted as she walked to Annabelle's room. What? You are not yet ready, and you are still sleeping, Mrs. Wendy yelled. Mom, Annabelle called as she yawned. We are all ready and about to leave for the anniversary, and you are not ready. Mom, I'm sorry about that. I will join you guys later. I will get myself ready. See you later in the event, Annabelle said as she kissed Mrs. Wendy on her cheeks. You better get ready. I'm off. Bye-bye, Mrs. Wendy replied as she walked out of Annabelle's room. After everyone had left for the event, Annabelle called Mark to pick Joanna up at her residence. Mark arrived with Joanna. Annabelle quickly gave Joanna a makeover and handed her a dress to put on. Please tell me, who is Miss Annabelle? Because I am confused, said Mark humorously as Annabelle stepped out with Joanna. They all chuckled. You don't have to be tense, said Annabelle as she held Joanna on her shoulder, trying to comfort her. You have to walk into that event with your head high and don't smile at anyone except the guests because Mrs. Annabelle here doesn't smile to anyone no, and she's never tense, so you have to act like her, said Mark. And another thing, bring up an excuse not to come back home with my parents, said Annabelle. Okay, Joanna nodded. At the event, Joanna and Mark walked in. Joanna tried not to be nervous. She was having a glass of champagne with Mark when Harrison walked up to her. Annabelle, your mother requested your present, said Harrison. But why? Joanna asked. She wanted the both of us to welcome the guests along with her. Harrison replied, Really? But, asked Joanna with a worried expression. Joanna kept on whispering prayers not to get caught as she walked behind Harrison. Oh, my darling, you look beautiful. Come join me, welcome the guests. After they had done greeting the guests, Joanna quickly left Mrs. Wendy's presence. Where is Annabelle? I thought she was right here, Mrs. Wendy asked Harrison. Harrison shrugged in reply. It was time for Joanna to give her speech. She gave her speech so well. Mark quickly recorded a video of her and sent it to Annabelle. After the dancing and eating, everyone was ready to go home. Annabelle, we are leaving now. Join us in the car, said Mrs. Wendy. Mom, I'm going with Mark instead. I want to quickly get something from the mall. I'll meet you guys at home, she replied. Okay, don't be late. Mark drove Joanna back to her apartment. Wow, this is so good, Joanna screamed with joy. What is it? Mark asked. Mrs. Annabelle has credited me, and I believe if it was working, my salary wouldn't be up to this amount. Please inform Mrs. Annabelle that whenever she has a job for me, she will not hesitate to call me, okay? Said Joanna as she happily ran into her apartment. The following morning, the entire family was at dinner table, eating when Annabelle came to join them. When did you come back home last night? I was awake waiting for you to be back. I didn't notice when you arrived, said Mrs. Wendy. I actually came back home late and I walked in quietly to avoid waking up anyone. You were quite different yesterday. You looked a bit tense while making your speech. We all know that you are never tense. Why were you tense yesterday? Asked Mrs. Benedict. Like you care, Annabelle whispered to herself. As she rolled her eyes, yeah, I noticed you were quite tense, but you actually spoke well, said Mrs. Wendy, as she smiled at Annabelle. Thanks, Mom, Annabelle replied, as she gave Mrs. Benedict a stare. Annabelle, aren't you going to work today? No, Mom, I'm not going to work. Why? You don't miss work. What is wrong with you, my dear? Is something bothering you? Mrs. Wendy asked Annabelle. I'm okay. I just need to rest. You haven't resting for some days now. Is there anything you are not telling us? Is it a crime to have a rest now? Mother, You can have as much rest as you wish, as long as you don't fall ill and you are strong, said Mrs. Wendy as she patted Annabel on her back. After Mr. and Mrs. Williams left for work, Annabel dialed Mark's phone. Hello, Mark. I'll be resuming work tomorrow. Get all what I need ready, but you aren't so strong enough to resume work. Mark responded, I need to resume immediately. My mom's aunt is trying to create a scene, and my parents might begin to suspect me. I'll pick you up tomorrow morning, said Mark. The following morning, Annabel got prepared for work before anyone, and she went to work before her parents. While she was working, she suddenly developed a chest pain, and due to that, she couldn't concentrate on her work. She searched her bag and couldn't find her medicine. Oh, I forgot my drugs at home, she said to herself. Annabel took her bag and unfinished document and drove back home. Some minutes later, Mark called. Where are you? Mrs. Wendy is looking for you, said Mark. Annabel explained to Mark what happened to her and told him to come up with an excuse for her. Okay, but they're actually discussing of holding a board meeting tomorrow. What? So sudden? You won't be able to attend the meeting with such health. Oh. You actually need to go to the hospital, Mark said to her. I hate going to hospital. I've been going there all throughout my life. I am fed up already. Okay, you need to keep on taking your medication and also having a good rest. You should give Joanna a call to attend the meeting in place of you. I will let her know what she will do during the meeting, said Mark. Okay, I will call her, Annabel responded. After Annabel's call with Mark, she contacted Joanna. Joanna met Annabel and Mark at Mark's apartment, a board meeting. That seems more tough than the anniversary party. Oh. I went in place of you, said Joanna. You have nothing to worry about. Mark will explain to you how things is being done during the board meeting. Annabel replied, okay, so when is the day of the board meeting? Tomorrow. What? Tomorrow? Joanna shouted. Yes, what's wrong? Tomorrow is my mom's birthday. I have to travel back to gift her on her birthday, Joanna responded. Does that mean you can't go to the board meeting? Yes, I will take the gift to your mom and leave immediately. Please, let's exchange, pleaded Annabel. I hope my mom won't notice I'm not the one. She won't notice just as my mom didn't notice, said Annabel.